No one chooses addiction. It's a complex health condition. And when people have other health conditions, we show up, we help out. Addiction is no different. Make the connection, have the conversation, stop the stigma.
Patrick Johnston joins us Tuesdays from the Province and Post Media. And, wow. You know, I wasn't sure the Canucks could get more dysfunctional than they have been, Patrick. But when you listen to what Jim Rutherford had to say yesterday about his coach, what the coach shot back with this morning, this may wind up being the most dysfunctional chapter of them all for Canucks sports and entertainment. What's your thoughts on what's going on here?
Well, I did find myself thinking a little bit about Mike Gillis and 2014 going off at the end of it all. But I think at that point, Mike was just trying to get out. He wanted it all to end. I'm not sure Jim Rutherford wants it to end, but you sure as heck can tell that this is a frustrated hockey manager. And certainly, you know, when you're criticizing the coach as much as you are, you know, it's obvious how you feel about the coach, and it's hard to imagine you not having wanted to get rid of the coach. And so now but again, that's the other parallels is, you know, this feels like broadcasting to the owner again in the way that Gillis did in 24, or at least, you know, ostensibly was broadcasting to the owner. But, you know, I think more than anything was just trying to force
it's a my hands are tied statement, or not even statement, paragraph, essay, soliloquy, you know, whatever.
I mean, I think you could certainly, yeah, you could certainly take it that way. And I mean, that was, like I said, that was my first instinct, that this is a manager who's frustrated with the scenario he's in. And, you know, it is a topic that has come up before. It was something I asked him about, I think, in fact, on his very first day. And he talked about how inevitably, you know, in this role, you're always going to have to manage up. And at the end of the season, asked him how that was going. He said, well, we have lunch every couple of weeks. And I said, well, okay, you know, he didn't tell us what gets said at those meetings every 2 weeks, but I found myself wondering if they were as sort of happy-go-lucky as, you know, I think he might have wanted to portray at the time. And I mean, who knows? But that, like I said, that's my takeaway, that this is a manager that's not happy with the sort of, not happy with what's happening above him. I find myself wondering, you know, when he talked a bit about the cap constraining them, whether they truly understood what they were walking into in terms of that situation when they came here. But, you know, you're now, you know, you're 8 months, 9 months, almost a year down the road in Rutherford's case. You've learned what you need to learn. So now you figure it out. And so saying, well, this was a bad situation, great. But like, this is how the game works. It's, you know, and it's not like this was new information. People have been talking about the challenges this team had set up for itself cap wise for a long time. And if you weren't paying attention to that, I don't know what to tell you.
Let me ask you the Bodog poll question. Is Rutherford being unfair to Boudreau? Is there a school of thought, suck it up, coach, and just get it done by any means? Or is this just patently unfair?
Thought of just suck it up, Rutherford. Nothing. It's not Bruce's fault. He's got a contract.
As far as the question, is he being unfair? I mean, the world's unfair, you know. So from that standpoint, no, I don't think he is. It's certainly, you know, I don't think it's anything we're used to have ever seen before, really. But it's we forever live in such an unusual scenario here. That I think it's hard to judge these in normal circumstances. As I've said, you know, when I try to explain sort of how things go here to people away from this market, they do admit that, you know, that it all seems incredible. I mean, I was talking to someone who was involved with the team in recent years. Who had come from outside. And we were just sort of talking about all the things that would go on behind the scenes. And they just said, no, you know, no one realizes how difficult it can be when they're coming from outside, you know. And it's, you know, listen, if the team were winning, I don't think this would be a topic at all. You'd be like, well, whatever. And in the end, it's not like, as this person said, these are champagne problems, you know, like they're paid, people that play and work for the team at the top end anyway, are paid extremely well. And, you know, so it's not something that you're going to go out and publicly grouse about, but it is one of those death by a thousand cuts, little details keep adding up, and it just leaves a sour taste in your mouth. And people have left this organization feeling sour. and that stands out. And but like I said, no one really comes in thinking, oh, come on, how bad could it be? And then they find out.
Yeah. Well, what do you think the chances are that this is? I mean, I buy the owner theory that that's what it is, and it could be all of these things. But is this a deflection on what they couldn't accomplish this summer?
I think there's an element to that for sure. And like I said, okay, so you didn't know what the cap really was about when you showed up, but you know what? It is like you should have figured, you should have known that. And B, if you didn't, well, you figured it out pretty quick, and you're going to have to do something. You're going to have to, in the end, it seems pretty clear there were also, moves they could have made that they weren't willing to make. The other thing in all this that I do find interesting is, I also picked up on this, was, frustration with the sort of players' own culture. The Bieksa stuff last week was so intentional, and talking about how you approach yourself to the game. Like, it's not just about the coach's motivation. And obviously Rutherford's frustrated how the coach is setting things up, but I also heard frustration with how the players are approaching things, which made me think, well, if didn't you know that before? Like, it's not like these guys, it's the same group of guys as last year, basically.
But Patrick, that's one where I can give them a little bit of a pass and say, okay, there was a learning curve there to get to know the room.
Sure.
Not knowing the details of Boudreau's contract, that's either a failure to do due diligence or you were misled by the ownership group. The cap and not understanding how bad it is, like, can you not read Cap Friendly? Honestly, like, that holds zero water with me and should hold zero water with anyone. No, exactly.
Yeah.
So getting to know the room is something I wholeheartedly agree that it was intentional with Bieksa last week. The more I, thought back on Bieksa's speech, the more I wondered whether or not Jim Rutherford and them wrote it.
Yeah.
For heaven's sakes.
Yeah.
Try and, wake that room up.
Yeah, I kind of had the same thought. I mean, I'm sure. Hey, Kevin, could you maybe talk a bit about blah blah blah? That's something that we've talked about here before. Was that that was not necessarily a room that was like, you look at the Sedins and you look at Ryan Kessler and you look at whoever else and be like, those guys obviously would have been friends in real life, But in the end, they bonded and got along despite having no reason to have certain things in common other than they've been picked by other people to sit together in a hockey room. And that fact that, all those things that Bieksa said, I mean, it spoke to the professionalism of that group, of the intelligence of that group. And, you find yourself wondering, it's still hard to know who these guys are, but you do find yourself wondering the contrast there, that if this is a talking point, and this certainly has been a talking point for management, that you need to figure out a way to kind of take it to another level. And that requires pushing each other. And I thought a lot about when I talked to Rutherford at the Milford, and that story I wrote heading into the season with him. And he talked about Sidney Crosby and the desire that Sidney has every single practice just to beat all the other guys. And, that in hindsight was way more telling than I think I really picked up. But it very much in the same line as all this is that, they want this group to figure it out. But, I mean, in the end, this is the group you had. At some point, you're going to have to make changes. And that to me frames the season so differently. But then you try to square it with signing JT Miller for 8 years or 7 years or what, you're sitting around with this guy and he's found his way offensively again. But I mean, many ways, the way he started the year and having no impact offensively and the weakness he showed defensively, like that was such a stark sort of demonstration of the players' flaws. I mean, the strengths are good, but the players' flaws. And in the end, you're like, oh man, like I get the desire to keep the offense there, but if you're trying to build this team into a contender in 2 years, like,
so yeah,
is that the guy? Like, I'm making a face on radio here, or on
on pod. Patrick, I'm wondering if Rutherford now views it as, well, all the hard work we should have done last year and trading players out and trying to get younger and trying to fix the cap is going to have to happen this year. So have they just lost a season here? Like, is that what this is coming down to? And ultimately, they're going to change a coach as well again this year.
And guys, here's the problem with that is you've made it worse. Then you've made it worse, Jim Rutherford, because you failed. You've gone out to sign Ilya Mikheyev, and you've taken on other contracts now, thinking, hey, maybe we can retool and be better. And now you're effectively eating the years of those contracts. You committed that term, and you're not ready to win.
I guess I do think a bit differently though is that your retool, I think, is the word. In the end, clearly what they're trying to do. And if you're trying to retool, that's going to be a process. And Rutherford has said they didn't want to rush into anything, right? And I always took that to mean trades. So now I'm sitting here, okay, now you kind of basically said we've reached the point where we said we were going to get to at some point, and we need to start making changes. But there were opportunities, as he himself has said, there were opportunities to do that in the summer. They got outbid on certain players. They had cap issues on other trades. Okay, fine. But now, it's kind of put up or shut up time, and you've kind of laid that out yourself. And, what I heard yesterday in the end was a president who was frustrated with his coach, perhaps frustrated with above.
Well, then resign. Then fire the coach or resign. Hey, we're getting
or make a move. Like, let's get on.
Do something. Exactly. If you just can't take it from above anymore, then have the courage of your convictions and say, I can't work in this environment anymore, and resign. Or if you think the coach is that bad, fire the freaking coach, hire somebody else, and see if you get your structure that you're looking for. But push is coming to shove here. I'm getting sick of the whining from the president of hockey operations. Like, look, so you failed to improve the defense. That rests with you.
Patrick, what do you think the fan confidence is right now? Do you think they feel like they're better off right now than they were under Jim Benning a year ago?
I think fans remain in the same mode as as I said before, they want to see something happen. I think I look at the crowd as it was on Saturday night. Like, I get Nashville's not a sexy opponent, but it's Saturday night, and there were empty suites and seats. There's just the buzz on the team is just not there, and for good reason. And obviously you have people who are willing to go have a good night out or whatever, but it's just the energy it's not in a good place. I mean, as it should be. People are frustrated, and I think it's been almost a year now, and there's been stuff around the edges, but at the end of the day, this team is very much what it was and remains underwhelming. And we're 12 games in, and we're already talking about fighting for your playoff life, and we already saw this story. We saw this story last year, and it's put up or shut up time. I really think that. Like, it's you keep going along, and you keep going along, and I can Riley Stillman seems like a really nice guy. I've had some nice chats with him, but why he's still in the lineup, especially after having as bad a third period as he did, where he got benched. And there's this reluctance to play Kyle Burrows, and the coach is, there's just frustrating. There's all kinds of things to be frustrated about. Like I get why people might be frustrated. People love the coach, but they're also frustrated with him. People are frustrated with management because they want something to happen. Like fans want to see something different. They've seen this story before, and it's I get why everyone's exhausted.
Yeah, sounds like Rathbone's going to draw in against the Senators as they head off on a second 5-game road trip, and of course emerge from the first one without a victory. Patrick, thank you for this. So much could happen between now and next Tuesday, so
we'll see.
We'll chronicle it then.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.